Redditors, who are not in love with their SOs, why are you still with them? We have a special needs daughter who doesn't talk until she's able to tell me that something happened and she can understand more complex ideas and situations. There's no way I'm putting her in someone else's hands. My husband and I just don't mesh. He doesn't like me and I don't like him. For the most part we can get along and even have fun doing things together with our daughter. But we haven't been intimate in years. We are both in our late 30s. And we reasonably don't have family to help. Although once she starts going to school full time, I believe I will have more options to do something financially productive with my time. My mother told me when I was 13 that the only reason she is still with my father is because of me and my 8 years younger sister, and that she doesn't love him anymore. My father though, he told me that he loves her but doesn't know what to do anymore because they argue so much. Tough stuff for a 13-year-old. But nowadays I think they will stay together till the end, just because they're used to the comfort and don't want any change. And because they want to provide us the best life possible and think that's only possible if they stay together. Over time, I learned to distance myself from all that stuff, but for a long time, it was really tough. It just sort of became a habit, and when I realized I didn't have the feelings anymore, we had 2 young children and I didn't want to break up the family, and later when we tried couples therapy, this didn't change anything, but our son was diagnosed with leukemia 2 years ago, so I felt we had to stay together until he was well. My ex didn't agree, and we were divorced this summer. My son is almost through the treatment and is doing fine. I have not been this happy and relaxed in years, and so far the kids, 6 and 9, have coped well with me moving, and when they are staying at my new place. You guys did the right thing. Much better for children to have separated, happy parents than married, miserable ones. Glad to hear you're doing well. Edit. For anyone who wants to ask for proof, please read the dozens of responses of anecdotal evidence. There are also a few scientific studies linked that show that, while divorce can have negative consequences in the short term, it does not in the long term. To people saying that divorce dooms their children to the same fate, staying with someone you clearly don't love does the same thing. Obviously, divorce should be seen as a last resort. I do not know why some people are reading this and thinking I'm advocating for divorce in every situation. Get therapy. Try to communicate better. But if nothing else works, it is a great last resort. Divorce parents do not always cause broken kids. Your situation actually sounds like a really happy and healthy arrangement. People who say we stay together for the kids is kinda missing the point. I hope you and your ex are open and honest with your kids about the situation and how it's okay to fall out of love. It also mentally hard on kids if their parents do stay together in a unhealthy and unhappy relationship. Plus people forget how smart kids are. They understand when their parents are upset and happy. X1. My parents are unhappy, but they're together and it definitely affects my relationship during negative moments. X2. I remember in elementary school talking to my friend and how unhappy she was at home because her parents would argue and throw the word divorce out a lot and say snide things when the other parent isn't around. Now she's really afraid of getting into a relationship and has accepted she'll be alone forever. Even though she does long for a human connection. She's in her early 20s and I'm like she's going to find someone. I've been that person before. Unlikely the exact same experience, but I would have days where I was in love and days where I felt completely distant. I even broke up once, but begged for her back a week later. I honestly thought I loved her at that time. In the end, I definitely cared for her, but I wasn't addressing my own mental health issues and other problems that I was using the relationship to try to cover. I also realized that sticking it out for her sake, be it mental health, guilt over moving with me, etc., wasn't right. It was condescending and took away her agency as a capable individual. I've always struggled ending relationships because even if I know I'm not in love, I still find myself caring for the person and not wanting to bring them pain in ending it, despite logically knowing that choice is worse in the long run and just wrong. I also, selfishly, still want the person in my life since they bring me comfort. It's probably best defined as cowardice, and it's something I still need to work on to this day. I'm in a very similar situation. I've loved my wife from the first time we wrestled. We used to be fun. 12 years ago. Last October she told me she wasn't sure she ever loved me. Made me question if I would ever be able to recognize love, if I've possibly never had it directed at me. Maybe I'm a bad husband. If I'm a bad husband, maybe I'm not that great at being a father to our kids. She moved out this spring. It was crippling. I was depressed for a few months. But I now realize I'm a pretty good dad. And I love that. She was always beautiful to me. The way that love affects how someone looks to you. Like there's somehow always sunshine on them. Or they look better in a t-shirt and comfortable jeans and a tight dress. Not that I didn't drool over her tight dresses. That is gone now. And in a way the saddest part. Because I loved loving her. Sorry if I hijacked your comment. It just brought up some old feelings. My cousin told me about 3 hours after he got married that he didn't want to get married, but now he was terrified he would lose his house and basically all his money, alimony plus child support, if they got divorced. I told him that he should have said something 3+ hours ago, and he said he couldn't. I then asked him if this was such a big concern to him, why he didn't get a prenup. His exact words to me were, "Those don't actually exist. They're just made up for movies." They've been married just over 2 years now, and I'm pretty sure it's only going to end if she leaves him or one of them dies. Considering he's 26 and she's 23 or 24, it sounds like he's in for a long miserable life. Being in love seems like a state over which you have no control. I long ago made the decision just to love the woman who became my wife. Fortunately, she made the same decision about me. Romantic infatuation has faded, but our love for each other endures. It takes work to maintain, to avoid taking each other for granted. Love is not an emotion, it is a practice. Edit. Thank you for the awards. I'm glad I could contribute to making some folks' days a little more hopeful, and perhaps inspire a bit more love in the world. I think that you make an awesome point, but I'd like to add on to your point. Couples need to ask themselves why are choosing to love someone. Is it out of guilt, sympathy, children, etc.? Would they choose to love the same person, even if their life circumstances were different? Do they trust that the other person is making the same choice to love them back for the same reasons? If they would make the choice to love each other regardless of the circumstances, and they trust each other to do the same, then yes, your statement about love is true. If not, then they need to find a person who they are willing to make those commitments with. And yes, I completely agree that love is a practice. Finally, the infatuation has waned and waxed repeatedly over the years, but our love for each other endures. Now, when I get her naked. I'm currently in an amazing relationship, textbook true love type of stuff. However, years back I was in a relationship with a woman who abused me physically, sexually, and otherwise. And I did not love her, not for the last year or so, when the abuse got bad. So why did I stay, if it was so bad? Well, unfortunately, and this is true for abusive relationship as well as for mundane loveless relationships, people get wound up together, and then it becomes very difficult to imagine your life without them, even if it's not a good life. I guess people are better at surviving the current hardship than breaking away into the unknown. There's a lot more to my story, and everyone's story has its own details. But I think that's the basic answer. You build a life with someone, it gets hard to throw that life away. I realized recently that every relationship I've been in, until the current one, had absolutely no love in it. I told myself I loved them, but I was really with every one of them for convenience, or because they asked me out, and I was scared to say no. The last 2 ended so horribly, I was scared to leave the house for a long time, and routinely asked guys at my job to walk me to my car, because I heard one of them was looking for me. Met my current so online, moved 800 miles away to be with him. It'll be 2 years in January and we just had a baby girl together. It just took a literal frick ton of pain to get to the happy spot. I was with my first boyfriend for almost 11 years. I don't know when exactly it was I began to fall out of love with him, but I know it was at least a year or so before I finally left. I grew up and changed and he didn't. One day I realized I felt more like his mother than his partner, and that was the beginning of the end. I stayed for a lot of reasons. Fear he would hurt himself if I left. Financial obligations. We own a house together. Still trying to sort that out. We had 2 cats I thought would be crushed if I left. I had no family of my own and his family was basically all I had. Guilt and shame thinking I just wasn't trying hard enough. Thinking I owed him. And convenience. I had a big bad case of sunk cost fallacy going on. I thought if I just kept hanging on, kept putting in more effort, the spark would come back. But it never did. I'm ashamed of it, but eventually the feelings of frustration and discontent turned into resentment and contempt and I wasn't as kind to him as I should have been. I resolved so many times to put those negative feelings aside and choose to love him, but they always crept back in. I thought staying without love, but with security and stability would be better than leaving with nothing at all, but I was wrong about that. I was more miserable than I even was aware, and after I left I felt so unbelievably free and light, and like myself again. I'm sorry for both of us that I didn't leave sooner, because I don't think either of us was truly happy.